When this rookie showed up for the hunter trials, he blew everyone's mind, leaving the world's top S-rank hunters completely stunned. Why? Because he took down the industry's biggest star using no weapons, only raw and brutal hand-to-hand fighting. The judges' jaws dropped when the panel was revealed. Even the top hunter of an elite guild felt a wild urge to step into the ring and test this rookie, but they had no idea that Hukun had spent 80 years grinding in another world and personally killed that realm's demon king with just his bare hands. Once the victory parade ended, Hukun was completely exhausted, so he begged the goddess for help. He wanted to save his experience and memories, so after getting the goddess's approval, she placed his soul into a new body since his original one had vanished. Without even thinking, a blinding column of light crashed into Hukun, saving the new vessel that had only seconds left before losing all life. Even though the goddess bet on him and gave him a fresh start, Hukun only woke up when he finally broke free, his eyes opening to see he was back on Terrarma after that hellish world had dragged him right through the mud. But now back on Earth, he found himself living inside the body of a skinny teenage boy. He turned on the kitchen tap, watching the clean and safe water flow with wonder. With one click, the fire sparked to life, a real magic that made the arrogant mages from his old world seem like fools, especially since he now had crispy fried chicken cutlets to eat. Even though he felt totally out of place in this modern world, he knew paradise was right around the corner. But suddenly, a terrifying face slammed against the glass, filling him with pure horror and leaving him to wonder how such a monster could exist on Earth. Months later, a piercing emergency siren wailed behind him, announcing that a corrosion rift had torn open inside his apartment building and screaming for everyone to rush to the underground bunkers right away. Hukun was totally lost, wondering what a corrosion rift even was, but the sight that appeared next sent a chill running down his spine. A horde of monster people covered his window like bugs, their razor-sharp claws inches from smashing the glass. Just as the barrier broke, Hukun spun around and ran for his life, knowing this wasn't the Earth he knew and needing a quick lesson on how things worked now. Those twisted things looked just like the nightmares he'd faced in the other world. He pressed himself flat against the wall beside the window, slipped past their line of sight, and then effortlessly jumped out the window the moment they walked by. Trust the loudspeaker's warning and dash for the bunker. That was the moment he saw a child standing right in the middle of all the chaos. He started to pick the boy up, but stopped cold, realizing the kid was getting ready to rush back at the monsters. He looked like a baby, but his eyes were fierce as he launched into an epic tale of slaying beasts and begged Hukun to join the adventure, leaving Hukun completely stunned by how differently this tiny warrior thinks. Corrosion rifts are where monsters suddenly pop out of thin air with no warning or pattern at all. The truth hit Hukun like a blow to his head, forcing him to wonder why he survived 80 years of hell, only to walk straight into another one, and when he casually asked the kid who the strongest hunter on Earth was, the boy didn't even hesitate and shouted, "Lee Sunong Yoon." She's the #1 fighter in the top 10 from the Gabi Guild, wields a sword as big as a truck, and is right now taking on a rift in Suan all by herself. Even with super hunters around, Hukun still felt like civilians battling mobs was just a fever dream. Finally, he clamped a hand over the kid's mouth while silent enemies closed in. He looked ahead at 5 nasty mugs and stared them right in the face. But Hukun's experience told him something felt wrong, so he stayed perfectly quiet. Luckily, the skinny ship wasn't a total waste, as it had power enough to blast through the trash mobs. The real challenge was keeping the young NPC alive during the fight, since leaving him behind wasn't an option. But just as Hoon figured out his next step, a familiar tingle of blue mana rippled through the air, reminding him that the physics here were exactly like the battlefield he once ruled. Then, with a sudden whoosh, one of the monsters bursts into a towering flame thanks to Hukun. Though his 20 years of stored mana is lost, he can still draw magic from the very air he breathes, tapping into a paradox flame burned deep into his soul to melt even these small fry, leaving the kid staring at the floor in shock at seeing such power. Hype takes over the brat and rushes in to steal the kill. Hukun just stares, completely dumbfounded, because the monsters haven't even noticed him yet, but thanks to the kid's stupid mistake, he instantly becomes their first target, and pure terror washes over his face. Hukun grabs the kid's arm right at the last second. He signals for the stick while staring down the threat. He needs to find a weapon to help him fight. 3 monsters let out loud screams and rush at them, getting closer every second. The moment wood strikes Hun's palm, the atmosphere changes and his eyes turn icy. With a sharp slice that tears through the air, he swings and cleaves 3 monsters in half at the waist before the spear god is already back inside the building, leaving the kid so stunned he forgets how to breathe. To the boy, Hukun isn't just some random stranger anymore. He must be a master hunter pretending to be a beginner. Inside, Hukun is furious because the quiet life he fought so hard for is already falling apart. Hukun, his face already scarred, drags the kid toward the underground bunker. The mom rushes to thank Hukun for saving her son, but when he notices her expensive designer clothes, he stops dead in his tracks, realizing the kid came from money and that explains his attitude. All of a sudden the entire building starts shaking so hard that everything crashes down. A huge monster smashes straight through the door and charges right inside. Chaos erupts and everyone scatters like cockroaches, except Hukun, who stands frozen like a tree. The kid screams, "Run! Even you can't fight that thing alone," but Hukun doesn't even flinch. He thought he'd made it back to the real world, but nope, this place is just as crazy as the other one. He turns to the rich kid and says, "If you're loaded, why play hero? Just go hide in a mansion and live easy." The kid's expression darkens. "My dad died back then," the kid said, explaining how his family hid in a shelter that still couldn't save him from the monsters, which taught him that safety is a lie and that he must become the strongest hunter to wipe out every corruption rift. Though Hukun quickly cut him off with a calm smile to reveal the hard truth that while he might make a solid hunter, saving the world isn't in his fate. The mom frantically pulls the boy away, screaming for him to move, just as a thunderous boom shakes the room. The kid spins around to see the unstoppable monster lying dead, crushed by Hukun with a single hand. Hukun told the kid he couldn't save the world because the spot was already taken, and Hukun had the perfect record to fill it. After dealing with the monster, Hukun rushes back home to catch up on the latest news. Then the real horror hits. His bank account shows just 301, which is hardly enough for lunch. The original owner of the body had been a slave to a logistics company that collapsed after taking the rifts too far. Just as Hukun worries about surviving, a notification pops up on his phone offering a job with Hunter, and he's finally found his chance. As before long, the next morning arrives, and the Hunter Association is already on edge. It's draft day, baby, with scouts prowling the floor like hungry predators ready to sign the next big rookie to their guild. A scout laughs off the year's crop as nothing but NPC energy, just a bunch of extras. But then the air changes when one of the top 10 hunters in the world walks in, La So-yoon. Crowd went crazy because they finally got to see the celebrity up close, not just on a big screen. Whispers fly that she's here for Han, the electric prodigy from the academy, so Yoon gives a reality check by not even glancing at Chianga twice, treating the rookie like nothing more than a walking battery. Her colleague hints that Seonga could be useful, but the man in the sunglasses quickly shuts that idea down. The academy stars panic when real blood is spilled, but Yoon just smirks, tossing a hard candy to her colleague, like a treat for a good dog. The crowd roared below, ready for the next fight. Lai Yoon leaned in, eager to spot a hidden gem among the newcomers, but the announcer froze mid-sentence when he saw the file, a civilian who had never even set foot in the Hunter Academy. Deep in the dark pit, Hukun pulled his combat suit tight against the cold. He squeezed the basic gun the group gave him even harder. The loudspeaker's voice kept mocking him, asking how anyone sane would let a nobody walk up on stage. Now that we're stepping into the light, it's Hukun's turn to compete. Honestly, the name still felt strange on his tongue, even though the simple rules, use weak weapons and never kill, didn't scare him because Hukun wasn't here for fun but needed this hunter exam as his golden ticket to higher clearance. Facing him was a smirking blonde boy who acted like he owned the world and treated Hukun like garbage. The referee slapped his hand down. Fight on. For the instant the blonde kid lunged forward, drooling at the chance to crush a powerless scrub. Hukun didn't even flinch, his face as calm as still water. Like him, that kid was just a moving target waiting to be hit. A loud thud echoed as Hukun drove his spear straight into the concrete floor. Then he vanished, leaving the blonde kid blinking in stunned disbelief as a blur of speed disappeared from sight. But a chilling breath ghosted over his neck the moment he thought of fighting, and Hukun hissed that his broken form required no weapon to shatter. Before the kid could turn, a fist slammed into his gut, right at the spot that makes you want to throw up. The kid's knees gave out, but Hukun grabbed him and yanked him back up. Crack. The punch was so hard it broke the guy's jaw like glass. The blonde boy who was acting so arrogant just seconds ago was now dead on his feet. Hukun frowned, knowing the kid was weak but too fragile like glass, so he chose to fight with bare hands instead of using his spear, which would have turned the boy into a shish kebab instantly. Hukun let out a breath, loosening his grip, thinking the guy was nothing but a rookie who wasn't worth the effort. Up in the stands, Lee Soon froze in shock as she frantically scanned Hukun's file, discovering he was just a warehouse worker whose colleague tried to excuse his impossible power with a claim of low mana, only to earn a glare and a piece of candy flicked at his forehead from the furious Lee Soon. Luck wasn't the answer. Her gut knew this guy was holding back his power just to stay hidden. Back in the ring, Hukun cracked his stiff neck, knowing he had to end the fight with no room for doubt if he wanted to make his point. In a flash, he was already standing beside the wobbly blonde. He lifted his fist with a terrifyingly calm voice, whispering, "Relax, this won't kill you." The blonde kid's eyes went wide with sheer terror. He screamed, "Please for mercy." Then the man said, "Wet one tap, lights out," and the kid hit the floor. The arena buzzed with hushed talk as the scouts whispered, but while everyone else argued over the numbers, Lee soon made the call. She was going to test this wild card herself, and her partner just blinked. "Where are you going?" "Straight to the top," she said as she marched for the president's box to ask for a favor, while Hukun tore through everything he could find. It didn't matter who they sent against him, the result was always the same, and no one could last 3 moves. Hukun was getting annoyed with what the academy was teaching these soft kids, until the fodder cleared and a real challenger stepped up. The air changed in a heartbeat, with whispers spreading through the crowd as Hanung appeared, making everyone hope he could finally stop the mystery nobody's winning streak. Hukun gave her a quick once-over, his eyes widening with excitement as he realized she was radiating the strongest mana he'd felt all day. Ansonga spoke straight, saying you've ridden on luck this far, but now the ride is finally over. Hukun bit back a sneer, wondering if they actually teach those cheesy one-liners in the textbook. Slowly, she reached for her sword and pulled it out. Her eyes burned with golden fire, daring you to think you could stop her now that she was ready to fight. That made Hukun stop in his tracks, realizing that if he let his real powers loose, she'd be in the hospital right now. Ansonga breathed in deep, sank into a fighting stance, and let her magical power swirl tightly around her hands. The golden lightning sparked against the steel, while the blade buzzed with a deadly hum. Vahikin's curiosity suddenly flared, but in an instant, Hananga vanished in a blur of teal energy that left a glowing trail behind her. But her long-prepared, supercharged/hit only empty air because Hukun had already jumped high into the sky. Xfuanga's brain short-circuited, but he dodged her lightning-fast slash by jumping into the air, leaving her shocked as Hukun realized she had turned her katana into a powerful railgun that slammed down with a heavy thud. Technique was perfect, he admitted, but your timing was off because you were desperate for speed. Her deadly mistake was that magnetic rail, which locked her attack into one straight line for speed, making it useless against someone who knew exactly where it was going and refusing to let anyone face that incoming blast. Song's ego shattered. Total fluke, she lied to herself. She gripped her hilt again. She went feral. I don't even need that ult to crush a nobody like you. But reality had other plans. He danced around her strikes like she was moving in slow-mo. Could possibly laugh at me after I dodged your flashy slash, since you clearly think that kind of trickery will work on me. She saw red and instantly kicked logic out of the conversation. Blinded by rage, she prepared to unleash a massive explosion, but Hukun saw the danger instantly as she pushed her magical energy far beyond its safe limit. Just one more second and her arms would fly off, but then zip, nothing happened. Suddenly, Hukun appeared right in her face, showing off a cool trick, but that's it, game over. Then with absolutely no hesitation, he smirked and raised his left hand as if to say, ouch, that stings. He didn't unleash his full strength, yet she gagged and nearly vomited right there. Hukun refused to stop, firing off a lightning-fast series of punches that hammered her mug without any mercy. Crack! A massive punch landed, and Sayonga's vision faded into black. Thud. The Academy's golden girl hit the floor, not a winner but just another casualty. And the arena fell so quiet he could hear a pin drop after he took out that top student. Ten looked like a total NPC. The crowd started copying him, assuming Song A was just a weak fighter who had skipped leg day, but then Hukun felt a twitch behind him, braced himself for a second round, and when he spun around he saw her trembling slowly while raising her left hand. She was hit so hard she could barely stay upright. Hukun actually laughed and jokingly told her to quit, so she immediately did it, showing off that classic honor student behavior, but right then a man in a suit rushed at the referee and whispered something shady, making the referee's face turn grim. Mike crackled, signaling a sudden change of plans where the winner gets a break, leaving Hukun to frown and wonder why he even needs to recharge after the fight is over. With a massive shock, the referee announced that Hukun was stepping into a special match against a top pro hunter, approved straight by the president, and with the name flashing on the giant screen, the entire crowd went absolutely wild. Hukun narrowed his eyes, thinking the vet was just a stress test, but he wasn't scared since he had faced much worse, even in other worlds, until the sudden screech broke his focus. Steel dragged ominously across the concrete. You Hukun, the woman asked. I'm Li Yun. Let's see what else you're keeping up your sleeve. Her stare was heavy enough to crush bones. You're too big for this kiddie pool. Want to go around with me? You can bail if you're scared. I know it's abrupt. Hukun smirked bitterly as he clocked her identity. It was her that top 10 hunter the kid hyped up earlier, and that pressure, it wasn't for show. She was a legit apex predator, a survivor of hellish war zones. With his current stats, even with a spear, a head-on clash was suicide. But for some reason, Hukun couldn't stop grinning. You want to test me? Bring it. The referee blinked and asked, don't you need a break? Soon caught the fire in his eyes, revealing the pure warrior instinct in him, and she smiled, thinking, we're cut from the same cloth, aren't we? Hukun grinned as a jolt of power surged through him, ready to prove if the strongest could ever earn his respect, only for them to explode into a blur of violence and leave the stunned crowd in a heavy, silent shock. Even the referee is dripping with sweat and stuttering so badly he has no words left. Hukun ducks a smash from Lee San, but he's not doing well. He can feel her huge strength shaking his bones. She is a true beast, packing so much raw power that she could humble any male hunter alive. But no room to breathe. Hukun snaps his wrist and spins his spear like a giant propeller to shove Lee San back, one heavy step at a time. Look at her face, as cold as stone, barely sweating while she plays him for time and saves her best tricks for later, while Hukun's speed is starting to fail him. Going toe-to-toe with him Shrank is taking its toll, and Hukun looks wrecked, struggling to keep up with Leon's killer instincts even though he sees the gaps in her defense. While she absolutely loves the rare chance to spar with such a tough opponent, though she knows his energy is finally running low. She nods with respect, admitting you were good for 30 minutes when she only gave you 5, but before you can celebrate, she grabs you and says it's time for a nap. Hukun's knuckles turn white on his spear as his magic runs dry and the air grows bone dry. He let out a long breath to calm his shaking nerves. He leans back with his eyes locked on her, tracking every tiny move until she slips, at which point the black fire explodes, and Sane freezes for a split second. But instead of giving up, she dives straight into the fire to slice the attack in two, leaving Hukun scrambling back with nowhere to go. A smirk slowly spreads across Yoon's face as she watches him, puzzled by how he's still standing after her combo, and wondering about the strange dark energy surrounding him before explaining that despite her sword cutting right through it, Hukun calmly reveals it's his ultimate secret weapon, the Paradox Flame, a power he once relied on for his life in another world. It's not ordinary fire, which is why my gear isn't turned to ash, because this heat doesn't burn anything solid. It eats up abstract ideas, but right now I can't burn heavy things like identity or memories. Then Hukun explodes into motion, his spear screaming through the air as he burns away his own exhaustion. Yoon's eyes go wide as he realizes your speed has suddenly skyrocketed, making him wonder if you were secretly holding back all along. Hukun wastes no time, glitching forward like a teleport to appear right in her face and slash his spear in a deadly arc, leaving Soon reeling and wondering how such speed is even possible before he vanishes with a sharp whoosh before the sentence ends. Just as his heart stops, she reappears right in front of him, moving at the same crazy speed, and their weapons clash with a deafening crash that sparks like a storm, making Sun realize the magic in the air is glitching while the arena walls stay safe, meaning there is only one possible explanation. Hukun's Paradox Flame is like normal fire that heats up by burning wood, but instead it burns ideas to release pure magic energy. Hukun lights the Paradox Flame with mana, which burns away his tiredness to make more mana, creating a broken cycle where exhaustion turns into fuel that powers the fire. He's a tank who never gets tired, while she gets weaker the longer they fight, until Sane suddenly slashes her sword down like a guillotine with a loud clang. The arena floor crumbles into dust, yet Hukun is already long gone. She lifts her head, her voice dropping low and scary, asking if you really think you can keep going. Yu-chan burst through the swirling dust, clinging to his opponent like a desperate leech and grinning through the pain as he declared he'd drag them both into the deep end without ever quitting. Lisa's eyes finally showed exhaustion after she had been holding back her power to match Yu-chan, knowing that using her full strength would mean defeat, while Yu-chan kept taunting her about her limits and Loon checked her watch to see that 4 hours and 17 minutes had passed. Hukun stood frozen on the ground while she looked down at him and laughed, saying, "You lasted longer than I expected. Want to try again?" Hukun tapped out right away, begging to be let go because he was about to pass out, which meant Lisa Yoon was the winner. She dug into her coat and pulled out a lollipop. Her team went stone still, their eyes widening in total shock. She tossed the candy at Yu-chan and a business card flew in right after it. Yush inspected the card containing my info and warned him not to ghost me, noting that while his old ID was just scribbles on paper, this new brick now handled biometrics, gear trading and live calls all at once. It felt like a magical message from the other world he used to live in. Suddenly a towering figure of a man blocked his view, and your Hunter Yu-chan camera added 10 points, making you look even sharper up close. This guy who stood well over 6 feet 6 tossed me his business card. Quebec Company Limited. Lying Hyun, the giant didn't mince words. He wanted Yu-chan on his roster. He swore that with the right XP under his leadership, Yu-chan would be a superstar. Yu-chan studied him. The guy didn't seem to be capping, but then Lisa Yoon-Onunkan's face flashed in his mind. That subtle blush, and the way she insisted he call her. Yu-chan pocketed Lee Song-Hyun-Onunkan's card without looking at it. He was already booked mentally at least. Going to need a minute to chew on that, he said. Lion Hun didn't get angry. He burst out laughing and told the other person to take their time since he wasn't going to force them to give up anything. Yok-chan relaxed until Lee Song-hun's heavy hand squeezed his shoulder, forcing him to hold his own defiant gaze, while being warned to think hard and proving himself a smart player before walking away into the quiet silence. His sheer boldness and aggressive nature made it clear he'd never join that guild. 10 minutes later, Yu-chan called Lee Son, instantly pinged the second-floor Hunter Association HQ cabin location, and arrived to find the staff buzzing with excitement because she was finally trending, warmly greeting her with a "we've been expecting you" vibe. As he got closer, Lisa Yoon spun around and waved him over, looking shaken and asking if something bad had happened. Yu-chan handed over the TL Docker, while a huge guy tried to recruit him and Lisa Yoon didn't even flinch. That was Lee Song-hyun from the TEP Guild, and when a rival sees him claim a prospect, the other guilds usually quit immediately. Yu-chan gave a dry chuckle, shaking his head at the fear his squad holds for him, admitting with a sigh that it feels a bit disappointing. Lee soon flipped the script by not trying to sign him, but instead asking if he was interested in freelance work where he could raid high-level dungeons without being tied to a guild tag, which made Yu Chen very interested since she was suggesting he finally had the freedom to explore dungeons on his own. She added that Uni was going to offer you a grunt role anyway, and then it was done. Yu-chin slammed his hand hard on the table, shouting about how lowly the entry level really was and demanding to know exactly what a partner hunter actually did, which made Lisa Yoon lean in close to explain that guild hunters are built on a simple three-step ladder of rookies, seniors, and finally partner hunters. The first two groups are just regular squad members following orders from a partner, which is basically just a high-paying routine job, but partners are in the big leagues because they own shares in the guild and make money from the profits instead of a steady paycheck, acting like co-owners who truly run the show. Lisa Yoon revealed that the whole squad didn't feel like monster hunters but rather a ruthless legal team, because guilds used to copy their structure straight from law firms. But here's her take. Hukun didn't need to play the boring corporate game or grind from rookie to senior just to get noticed. He saw it right away that if he could pile up enough power and pull off impossible feats, the guilds would come begging for him. That moment of clarity made Lee San smirk with satisfaction, as chatting with Hukun felt so natural he didn't even need to filter his words, though she threw him off by constantly feeding him sweets since he'd sat down. But Hukun was still just a nobody with no friends and no money, making it feel like he had to climb a giant mountain barefoot to land those big jobs. Lisa Yoon waved away his worries as if they were nothing, promising to handle everything herself and do it for free. That only made Hukon's guard go up. There's no such thing as a free lunch, so he cut to the chase. Why? Why go this hard for a total stranger? Lee San slid her hand into a file folder. Down the road when you're a legend, and guilds are fighting a war just to recruit you, I just want you to remember the woman who gave you your start to Hukon. It sounded like she was banking a favor for a rainy day. Slowly, she slid the dossier across the table. Take a look. Whether you sign on or walk away is 100% your call. Hukon flipped the folder open and started scanning. 2 years ago, a failed raid by the Incheon city government left the Gyeodong Island area hopelessly corrupted. Hukun thought he'd be fixing the rifts, but his real job was just to guard Gyeodong Island, spot any new holes appearing and squash them right there before they spread. Hukun threw the job papers back on the table, a gig that could literally kill you, but Lisa Yoon's eyes were sparkling because she knew that once you become famous and powerful, the money will chase you instead. In that instant, she waited for just one answer, and after a brief pause, Hukun said, "If that's how you see it, I'm ready," adding that he never backs down from a challenge. 30 minutes later, 2 cars were racing down the highway. Lisa Yoon talked to her secret contact about Hukun, a civilian who won a deadly tournament using only his fists, but the man on the other end wasn't impressed, just saying it wasn't bad. Glenn burst out laughing at the absurd idea that anyone could have gone toe-to-toe with him for 4 straight hours. The voice on the phone stuttered in disbelief, asking if he was serious since that wasn't just him holding back his power. Lee San's laugh turned icy, and though I'm a seasoned hunter who survived hell itself, I found myself stuck in a deadly stalemate with him for hours, leaving me to wonder if I'd ever face another monster like Hukun again, even in a second life. After a long silence, the man answered, "Look, I don't care how much you hype him up. This mission needs hunters with actual field IQ. Skills aren't everything, but can he actually work with a squad of veterans?" Lee San told him to relax because she'd already sent a seasoned pro to watch over Hukun on the ground. The man dropped one last question. "What happens if that kid eventually reaches your level?" Lisa Yoon smirked. "You might not like hearing this, but you'll have to live with it." Her voice dropped an octave. "If Hukun hits my level, even the boss won't be able to touch him." Cut to 1 month prior. Hukun had just ordered something online. The delivery guy was struggling, sweating buckets. "This thing weighs a ton. What the hell did this guy buy?" Once he left the package at the door, the driver took off running. The hallway fell quiet once more. Hukun pried the door open and hauled the package inside. Soon, a shiny black box appeared on his table, waiting to be his new favorite toy. With a satisfying click, Hukun opened the case and saw a spear so perfectly made it felt like magic, instantly becoming his perfect weapon for easy fights, while a glowing green spirit potion inside promised to save his life whenever his magic ran out. Usually mana control is like a water dispenser where hunters sip from the air, tank it in their gut and spit it out for battle, but a spirit potion just speeds up that whole cycle. But Hukun didn't play the normal game. He skipped saving energy and instead pulled power straight from the air to unleash it the very instant he needed it. The advantage was clear. Because he took his bullets straight from the world around him, he could never run out of ammo. Plus, constantly channeling that raw power acted like a workout for his internal circuits, making them tougher with every cycle, but there was a catch. Until his mono channels were upgraded to handle it, he couldn't dump all his power in one split-second burst, so he had to scavenge for a backup battery to keep going. He chugged the potion all at once, and after a month of hard work, he knew he had finally reached his goal. A month later, the gathering place at Yeongjong Island was already crowded with hunters getting ready for their raid. The guards checked his ID and instantly shouted out that he belonged to Squad 8, so he walked up to the big sign with the number 8 on it. Hukan stood still like a statue while the noisy lobby chattered around him, wondering when the real action would start, but his meditation broke only when he heard Hunter Hanunga's name and turned to see her with a fresh short haircut that looked like she'd learned to hide from monsters, walking up with a determined look that made Hukan raise an eyebrow and question why he was the one chosen in a place full of hunters. She didn't even flinch, for she saw his power and wasn't just looking for a partner, but a front-row seat to watch him move. Hukan stood frozen in shock, realizing he'd just been handed another heavy backpack to carry, and with a final warning to keep up or get left behind, the staff member abruptly cut the microphone. "Listen up, team, all 8 of you watch my back because our briefing begins right now. Since we're dealing with rookies, I'll break down the basics while the veterans handle it. The rifts come in 3 levels and an unranked tier, where the smaller numbers mean you die faster, and the very first one to open in a zone is always the alpha. Right now, the Alpha on Yongjong Island is camping out at a church in northern Unori, and even though it's unranked, don't get fooled because rifts are unstable and you should stay away. Your job is to patrol the east side of Unumri, keep your eyes open for any new rifts, and deal with them right there." A groan of annoyance rose from the team, who were stuck babysitting a rookie on a clearing mission, and someone asked, "You serious right now?" The staff ignored the salt and marched them to the op zone, where Hukan caught whispers of fear that claimed the place was so dangerous it made their blood freeze, yet he just rolled his eyes at the drama. A clink as Saw tapped her blade against his leg, signaling the raid had begun. The crew shouted, "We're watching your health from the control room. If you need help, just radio us, and good luck out there, hunters." As soon as the squad reached the zone and gathered to plan, Hukan cut through their heated argument about which weaker section to attack, pointed at the map on his phone showing their base at Huaiju Temple, then pushed forward only to be met with instant hostility as locals demanded to know who he was, why a newcomer was leading them, and when new people started calling the shots. Hukan ignored the tantrums, took the high ground, found shelter in the intact buildings, and thought it was basic tactics while wondering if you left your brains at home. He wasn't sure logic would push them this far, but since we have choices, climbing that mountain just to get surrounded is out of the question. Hokwon let out a sharp laugh that cut through the tension like ice, saying, "Get real, we aren't facing 10,000 enemies, so how do you plan to get surrounded up high?" That clapback just made them furious, and let me tell you, rookie, there is absolutely no way we're taking orders from a total beginner like you. Owen sighed inside, thinking it was a new world with an old problem where some people simply refused to use their heads, so he stopped arguing, dropped the ultimatum cold, and decided to let them play their game while he played his own. He thought only Han Sona had his back, but then a surprise showed up as an extra rider joined the ride. Hone stepped up beside the guy, noticing a mana signature that was far stronger than Hanung Oz's and realizing the name was Kim Min. But why was he ditching the main squad? Huan asked, and the answer almost made him break character. Min-jae figured since this was probably their debut run, he couldn't just let 2 rookies wander off and get wrecked, so he was basically there to babysit them, and well, at least someone had a conscience. Suddenly, Huan's eyes locked onto the path ahead because something felt wrong. He spun sharply without hesitation, taking a tight turn. Before anyone could ask about the sudden change, Hone raised his hand to bring everything to an immediate halt. He pressed a finger to his lips to demand total silence, while quietly checking the area around him. Min-jae stepped forward to peek at the scene, and the sight of a monster horde swarming the tree instantly took his breath away. "We're talking 50 beasts, no problem," Min-jae whispered quickly as they moved off the main path to dodge the crash, but Hone just raised a hand calmly and asked for his ult and skill, his eyes turning hard when Min-jae stammered, clearly wondering if he was doubting the fight. That hesitation really annoyed Hoenn, who snapped, "Hunters kill monsters, that's the job." He pressed, "I won't say it again, what's your skill?" Turns out Min-jae's a pyro with a fireball as his main attack. Perfect, so wait for my mark and then blast him. Min-jae froze, his mind scrambling to make sense of Hoenn's cold logic because he wasn't ready for such ruthless leadership. Just as Min-jae was about to lose her mind, Hana stepped in to take the hit, leaving Min-jae wondering how she could possibly help. Min-jae froze in panic, staring down 50 enemies with just 3 rookies, a hopeless suicide run that demands an immediate retreat to call for backup. One shook his head in disbelief, knowing that by the time anyone figured it out, we'd already be the monster cow. The plan fell apart because Juan's team rushed out of the temple while everyone else wasted time searching the beach and waiting for a radio signal that wouldn't save them, leaving them vulnerable to the monsters that would tear apart every other group in the area if they scattered. Min-jae paused to gather his thoughts, did the math, and finally saw that Juan was right. Even with help standing by, no one is promised to jump in after all the mess that just happened. It was down to the 3 of them against the endless horde, so they had to strike from the shadows, hiding their ace in the hole, Min-jae's fireball, until the perfect moment to strike. Hone silenced the noise and dealt the cards. Min-jae dropped the nuke right in the middle, and I'll hold the sides tight so nothing escapes. Min-jae stared in shock at Juan, who moved like a seasoned general who had already planned the whole fight in his head, and they held their breath as the monsters gathered. Min-jae didn't hesitate at all, he let it rip right away. Before the monsters could even blink, a massive explosion swallowed the pack, turning the front line to ash in an instant. But Min-jae had to rest before taking on the next cast. That was Hoen's moment to step in and become the shield. Jay slammed his hands against his forehead to desperately gather power, only for Hoen to suddenly blur right past him in a split second. His eyes burned with bloodlust, knowing his only duty was to stay in the thick of the fight and buy the mage precious seconds. With a flash of steel, Hoen cut through the chaos, felling the rift monsters in one swift breath, proving that surviving the raid means holding the line until the next fireball turns the rest to ash. Suddenly a monster lunged straight at his throat. Hukan didn't hesitate. He threw his spear in a sharp, deadly curve that took out a whole group of monsters in one swift move. But since he couldn't protect Kim Minj forever all by himself, he knew he needed help right away. Hukan barked, and instantly the air screamed as Hananga drew her blade to wipe out 3 goblins in one strike before declaring the sector clear and passing it on to Kim Minj. Before her voice faded, the air warped with heat as Kim Minj unleashed a huge fireball. Hukan slammed his hand down to freeze everything, saying, "Hold it, wait till I get out of this spot, then you can fire, but watch out because that'll roast me right along with you." As the second Hukan fled, Minj fired her weapon, unleashing a roaring wall of fire that tore through the trees like a wild beast chasing the horde. A deafening boom erased where Hukan had just been, but he had barely managed to roll out of the way before the blast hit. Hukan squeezed his spear so hard his knuckles turned white, waiting for the next move. 2 lucky folks tried to run away in the mess, but Hukan had no mercy today and dropped them both before they could even fall. Moments later, the smoke cleared to show Hukan driving his spear into the ground, a sign of total victory. The ambush was a total victory with every enemy mob dead, but that fight definitely drained their strength. Just as Hukan turned to hype up the squad, a chill ran down his spine. He spun around to find Minj pointing a gun at his head, but MJ smirked and stepped aside, telling him he was blocking his shot. Hukan's heart stopped skipping a beat and he genuinely thought he was about to get fragged. Bang bang, Minj squeezed off 2 quick shots past him, instantly dropping the hidden mob. Once the mission was greenlit and wrapped up, cleanup crews would roll in to tag corpses with microchips so dealers could sweep the field, harvest any valuable loot, appraise it, sell it, split the cash between themselves and the fallen hunters' families. Who could possibly ask the big question or trust these guys when Minjae only shrugged and said they were safe enough as long as you had a legit crew? But while they talked, a shadow lurked in the canopy watching Hukan like prey before crashing down and spraying stone debris everywhere. Hukan's gut told him to move, so he threw himself at Minjae and pulled him away from the crumbling ground right before it blew up, just in time to keep them from getting crushed. Minjae clenched his teeth in anger, noting that they had just defeated the trash mobs, and now this monster was letting out a bone-chilling laugh while flashing rows of jagged nightmare fangs. Khan's face turned as cold as stone when the pack leader didn't just growl but roared so loud the whole forest shook, leaving everyone wondering if he was calling for help. Hukan muttered a curse, wondering why the coward hadn't charged with its minions earlier since facing them alone now felt like a death wish, only for the bat leader to shriek and laugh again as Hukan realized this beast radiated a mana pressure leagues above the others. Hukan roared, "Back off and don't fight. I'm handling this alone," his voice cutting through the heavy suffocating fear that everyone felt, because if that monster got them, it was the end. So the team froze until he snapped, "I'm saying this once, run or I'll make sure you never walk home again by watching your heads roll on the floor." Hukan twirled his spear to signal a rush, knowing he could unleash his full fury alone, and a wild grin spread across his face. "Come grab that huge bat of yours." One bumped straight into the boss before he could even blink. Hansong-ah took a step forward, but MJ held her back and said, "Wait, we'll only get in his way." And he was right. Hukan wasn't losing, the bat leader couldn't land a single hit, and not even a scratch got on his gear, leaving Hannah watching in awe as she realized his reflexes were god tier, and if it were her, she'd have no chance against that speed. Hukan twists with liquid grace to dodge the alpha's claw by a hair, but he doesn't just run, he strikes back with his spear, sending black flames erupting everywhere, while the sluggish bat leader flails like a chew toy in a fight that isn't even close. Hansunga just stares, his mind struggling to catch up, wondering how a rookie could fight like a warlord who has already survived 1,000 hells. Suddenly, the big boss monster jumps forward to make one last crazy move. Hukan lets out a dry chuckle and says, "Perfect. Let's see if you're worth my full power." He slides backward on his boots, gliding over the dirt to make room. Then he did the impossible and hurled his spear straight up into the sky, leaving Sunna stunned and defenseless while everyone wondered if he had finally lost his mind. The spear shoots up as the monster lets out a roar and darts forward to strike. Kim Jae is losing control as Hukan, in the heat of the climax, foolishly throws away his only defense. In the space of a single heartbeat, the monster is right up against his face. Hukan doesn't even blink. He stares it down until there's a sickening crunch as the monster's head slams into the dirt. The spear he threw just moments ago came crashing down like a meteor and pierced right through the beast's neck, making the wounded creature thrash violently as it revealed its terrifying boss-level health. But it's too late, and Hukan isn't going to let anyone try to come back. Before anyone could even blink, he yanked the spear out and jammed it back into the skull, and once more the game was over. Jay stood with his mouth wide open, watching Hooken go from being trapped in a corner to suddenly holding the boss's treasure, and no one knew just how much power that took. Ukon breaks the quiet by turning to Minj and asking her to be honest about whether it's normal for a mob like this to appear here. Minjae is already sweating, which is wrong because he isn't a core unit, and if this is a corruption zone, it must be at least level 3. The corruption units follow a strict 4-tier ladder, but the intel on the Alpha Rift at Bridge East Island says it's unrated, meaning it has already broken through to level 3, and there is only one thing we can do: call it in now. M2 tries to ignore the waivers, but Hukun stops him with cold logic, pointing out that without level 3, none of this madness makes any sense. Minj's face turns white because leaping from unrated to level 3 isn't just a jump, it's a deadly cliff that leaves hunters with almost no chance of survival, turning this island into a death trap that demands immediate action. Minjae proposes a risky detour to save the other hunters first, betting that Hooken's crazy speed might let them take on a level 3 zone. Hooken gives a hard no because he isn't Superman and can't save everyone on the island all by himself. He lays it all out. Their job isn't to save people, but to hunt down the dangerous rifts, seal them up, and accept that losing lives is just the cost of the work. Anuna takes the stage with a trembling voice, yet if you were in her place, would you feel the same? If you were the one losing blood and fading away, wouldn't you feel alone and furious, wishing for a hero to save you? Hooken's eyes went completely blank, so he asked, "Are you trying to save people while acting like a dead body?" He isn't ignoring feelings, he's staring at the numbers, so if you want to play hero, go ahead, but don't drag me into your suicide pact. Hooken snaps at them to drop their savior complex because some deaths are set in stone, and if he meets that end, he'll fight until the last moment rather than hesitate and risk failing the mission and letting the rift kill everyone else. They drag that heavy emotional baggage around, they won't even make it 5 minutes. As the sun goes down, the team finds a broken-down house to crash for now and use as their base. The place looks like a ghost town with no sign that the corrupted have infected it yet, even though everything inside has been gutted. Minjae clears the area around them, noting only the eerie buzz of the dim lights that help them spot the other teams. But for Hookem, those lights are nothing but a dangerous mess that makes every move a tactical nightmare. Against the trash mobs, it's fine, but when a boss like that bat leader shows up, they become a giant glowing target, and it is catastrophe-level bad. Ron quickly checked his phone, sending a frantic message to every hunter to warn them that the dangerous rift had grown into a top-tier threat and they needed to hide in the dark immediately. All we had to do was smash the core and cut its power, which would make every monster vanish instantly and cause the whole broken dimension to collapse. Ron replayed the plan in his head, convinced the mission was easy and the scary stories were just lies, so he waited in the dark until the perfect moment to destroy the rift himself while his tired teammates slept, and Yuchen quietly set up a sensor nearby. If any beast came too near, that thing would scream, letting him vanish from the scene without stress. He raced through the woods toward the special rift spot he had memorized, thinking it would be a quick and easy midnight mission, but the mood suddenly changed as something moved in the bushes ahead, causing him to freeze in fear while a spooky cackle echoed through the darkness. His face went hard as he realized things were moving too easy, and suddenly, everything went wrong. He clenched his fists, wrapping them in a hot ring of fire to beat up the trash mob he expected, only to find something completely unexpected when he spun around. This creature was a titan, a monster he'd never seen before, standing so tall it looked like a skyscraper, while the bat leader from earlier looked like nothing more than a toy. At the same time, absolute chaos erupted at the Hunter Association HQ, where Squad 5's monitors flatlined, plunging the entire place into darkness as everyone was assumed to be dead. As death notices piled up on the screens, the bosses were losing their minds, so the comms officer screamed for help and blasted a priority SOS to every hunter, only for a new ping to show someone speeding straight toward the deadly rift's heart. The commander shouted to catch that crazy guy right away. Whatever lurked in that zone was a death sentence, yet the moment the ID tag loaded, the room fell silent because the hunter rushing toward the Alpha Core was none other than Yuchen from Squad 8. The rookie was the very first to find the core spot, and then the commander shouted to get a look at Yuchen's screen. It was unheard of to see a corrosion core level up in the middle of a mission, so in the chaos, only Yuchen reacted by diving into the danger zone while we watched his feed flicker to life, showing him sprinting for his life with a nightmare beast chasing him. The thing was far tougher and faster than Intel thought, and Yuchen's panicked voice crackled over the speakers, admitting that this monster was simply too strong to beat. Making it this far was just pure luck, but halfway through the dash, Yuchen went completely crazy, and I couldn't believe we didn't have any scouts to warn us about this nightmare. He swore he'd stuff the corrosion core down every clumsy suit's throat, a rant so loud it froze the HQ staff, who awkwardly muted him, knowing Yuchen the kid was still alive, and had to face that beast head-on, no matter how suicidal it seemed. He had to kite the enemy, chip away its health, and land a critical spear shot, but this foe was like a sponge that wouldn't stop soaking up his attacks. Trapped on the island and desperate for a recharge, Yu-chan narrowed his eyes, spotted his only option, and without hesitation, dove straight into the gaping black void below to trash-talk the giant monster chasing him. He had a theory to prove, but then Yu-chan's signal vanished from the HQ screens, meaning he had just walked straight into the deadly alpha corrosion core, leaving the commander's face turning as pale as a ghost. This was a catastrophe, yet inside the core it was strangely clean with no rot or decay, which made Yu-chan frown. Confused by how clean this high-level zone was compared to the messy Tier 5 and 3 areas, he wondered just how dangerous the lower tiers really were before hitting the rift's edge and realizing the real boss was waiting. Yon wasn't looking for a fight, but keep poking the bear and his patience would snap. He squeezed his weapon so hard his knuckles turned white, knowing his paradox flame was dangerous because it burned both foes and friends alike, turning it into a bomb that had to be shut down before it destroyed everything. But just as a beast lunged from the dark, Yu-chan didn't hesitate and thrust his spear to strike. A single scream echoed out and the creature fell dead instantly. Yu-chan smirked, thinking it was too easy, and instantly pulled raw magic from the air to refill his tank. Yu-chan let out a low, triumphant chuckle as he wasted no time, ripping raw energy from the air and shoving it straight into his core until his veins groaned and his inner channels grew as tough as steel. Yu-chan let out a ragged breath, watching faint wisps of demonic aura leak out like steam, realizing the payoff was insanely powerful, way more juice than he ever expected. The sky cracked like shattered glass above him, but Yu-chan didn't even flinch, clearly knowing the real show was just beginning as a horde of identical monsters poured out of the void, only to die instantly, proving that his perfected body was far too strong for such easy opponents who thought they could overwhelm him with sheer numbers. With a sudden burst of explosive power, Yu-chan tore the monsters apart before they could even get close, feeling like a god compared to his past life but still holding back 99% of his real strength. Suddenly, a dark shadow loomed behind him, and a cold spike of danger hit his spine, making him wonder just how quickly the assassin had moved into killing range. Yu-chan vanished for just a heartbeat as the attack hit, revealing the beast behind it, a twisted humanoid with a grotesque rat head and a pulsing core built unlike anything else. Instead of fear, Yu-chan smirked as he wondered just how many chain attacks this thing could survive. Yu-chan spun his spear like a buzzsaw before driving it home with one mighty thrust. The rat had stopped it completely. It screeched in mockery, proving it was far too slow. It was a huge error not to notice Yu-chan slowing down because the crash was still so violent that it shattered the weapon in an instant. Yu-chan stared straight at the beast with freezing cold eyes and his twin moon spear shot forward in a piercing thrust. With a sudden boom, a monoblast slammed into the creature and knocked it flying. Yu-chan didn't slow down. He closed the distance and hammered his opponent before its brain could even reset. The twin moon spear left a glowing blue trail in the air, which automatically replayed its first strike 4 more times. By simply tracing lines, he would only manage a dull 4-hit combo, but Yu-chan's mastery turned those blue trails into independent twin demonic boomerangs that hunted the target, making it nearly impossible to dodge. With the ratad frozen by the delayed attack, Yu-chan seized his chance to strike the monster again and ended the fight instantly. He tore into the beast with such fury that every strike echoed 4 times, driving the creature past its breaking point. Before he could finish, a strange box appeared in his hand, and when he opened it he was so shocked he couldn't move. Meanwhile, Hunter HQ was falling apart as deadly rifts spread from Bridge East Island and the team's health dropped to 0, leaving the commander frozen in disbelief at the screens as this nightmare played out exactly like a horror movie until an operator's sudden scream pulled him back to reality. The impossible miracle had arrived, the corruption signal was gone, every enemy was wiped out, and the commander stared in shock at the actual miracle happening right before his eyes. Yu-chan puffed out a long cloud of steam and looked up to see stars twinkling in crisp, fresh air instead of the toxic smog. But just 2 minutes ago, a tide of monsters had been rushing out from the rift. Nansa stood back to back with her squad, her body a map of deep cuts and wounds. Her grip was slipping, and she could barely hold onto her blade. Suddenly, adrenaline surged through her, and she slammed her right arm against her ribs to lock her fingers tight around the hilt. She gazed at the endless horde that had grown so large since morning, with Yu-chan nowhere to be found, while Kim Min-jae's voice trembled behind her asking if they could possibly survive the stampede of monsters rushing straight at them. Han Seong-ya shot one last, desperate look back at Kim Jae, who was running on empty with no energy left, knowing that while survival looked impossible and she was about to give out, falling down was simply not an option. Then, in the blink of an eye, a nightmare on 2 legs lunged straight for her. Her instinct screamed, so she ducked as a violet lightning blast shot from her palm, only for the adrenaline to fade and reveal that her legs had gone numb. Worse still, 3 more beasts charged straight at them. Min-jae was panicking, yet he stood frozen, completely drained and unable to move. The monster was just inches away from ripping Sangya's throat out. Min-jae squeezed his eyes shut, holding his breath for the bloodshed to come. 5 agonizing seconds passed, the scream echoed, it never came, and then they cracked their eyes open to a mind-bending scene. The monsters were gone, left behind as nothing but drifting dust in the wind. By the next day, Yu-chan rolled his vehicle up to the east assembly point on the bridge. He stared at the wreckage and his face fell, seeing bodies scattered everywhere and wondering if the corrosion rift had gone nuclear while he was away. The crowd stared at Hukun like he was an alien, but then you surprised them by clearing a level 3 rift all by yourself. They sized up his lean frame, doubting if he was built like a tank strong enough to pull off such a miracle all by himself. Hukun didn't bother with the stairs and instead saw the 8th squad coming his way. Minjae was still shaking, unable to believe that Hukun had taken care of everything all by himself. Hukun let out a dry, cold chuckle, acting not from a plan but from pure instinct that moved his body before his brain could catch up, doing what was needed to save his squad before deciding that now that the dust had settled, it was the perfect time to drop the villain act and start pretending to be the hero. Suddenly, a voice broke through the chaos as Park Yong-kai, a man in a suit from the Korean operations company, stepped forward. Hukun looked at him with no interest, asking, "So, you're the one pulling the strings behind this job?" Park pointed to the car waiting nearby, since the mayor wanted to talk face to face, and Hukun let out a long sigh. He'd lost count of how many times he'd been called to these old geysers that loved barking orders like an errand boy, but then a thought clicked that the contract made no mention of a bonus for wiping out a level 3 threat, so since he was already there, it was time to negotiate his paycheck. Hukun jumped out of the car only to be immediately greeted by Lee Bit-jae, an overly enthusiastic coordinator shaking his hand. As they walked, Lee couldn't stop talking about how the mayor was totally obsessed with the meeting, especially since the chairman had just cancelled everything to chat with Hukun, a rookie fighting a level 3 rift, a move not seen since legendary hunters from the first generation. Inside the office, a heavy-set man waddled out with a politician's smile, saying welcome and apologizing for the gloomy day before eagerly leading Hukun to his private lounge to win him over. With Bridge East Island's massive headache, Hukun sipped his coffee while plotting to drain the mayor's savings, only for the mayor to look surprisingly proud of Hukun's noob status, leaving Hukun genuinely puzzled by the strange reaction. Then he realized Incheon wasn't just a town but a whole city. It was the nation's economic heart, where the airport's top-notch systems kept huge logistics networks flowing through the city's veins around the clock. Plus, the free economic zone turned Songo and Chongo into global hotspots, but the sheer flood of foreign money became a problem. With so much money pouring in, Hukun seemed poised for an easy climb to the top, but the perfect pitch felt suspicious, making anyone wonder, who really cut short a sales pitch when you're hoping for a return on your investment? It's like trying to stop a mayor's popularity from crashing right before he needs to win his election again. The mayor cleared his throat and forced a crooked, practiced grin as he admitted you'd done your homework and reminded him that nothing stays buried in the age of smartphones. Yu-chan didn't need a deep dive to see that the mayor's term ends early next year, and his political chances are as dead as a doorknob. A single bead of cold sweat trickled down the mayor's temple as he chuckled nervously, admitting that without the Indian city government's approval, nothing could really happen here. Unlike a famous hero, a rookie like Yu-chan needed the mayor's permission just to start playing, while the mayor hoped to use Yu-chan's talent as his own magic trick and sell his powerful connections as the secret to big wins. He slapped a hand over a packet of instant coffee sitting on the desk, saying that since one brand's sponsorship was ending, they might just put your face on every box, and Yu-chan cut him dead with a quiet voice that sliced through the air like a knife, asking if he must look like a clearance rack item. The mayor stopped dead in his tracks, and his fake smile broke apart right away. Yu-chan had been watching the news closely, knowing the world was hungry for a new hero to break the heavy feeling of sadness. His eyes hardened like cold steel, and he replied, "You act like you're giving me the world, but I'll take everything you offer anyway. It sounds like a terrible deal for you, doesn't it?" Panic seized the mayor, who frantically scrambled through offers, vowing to pick only the safest and highest-paying raids for him. Yukon, that sounded excruciatingly dull, so he waved the guy off like a fly, stood up to bail, and tossed a sarcastic remark over his shoulder about sending his congrats to that coffee model, since Yukon just passed on the gig. While deep in the shadows of a grimy underpass, two silhouettes loomed as one voice broke the silence low and dangerous, revealing that the Gyeodong Island op was a total wash, with the grunt kneeling on the concrete, stammering apologies but managing to squeak out that there was a silver lining to the mess. When the boss heard the phrase silver lining, his ears perked up as the subordinate showed him a crystal clear video of Yu-chan unleashing the paradox flame during the hunter qualification exam. His eyes stayed locked on the screen as a slow, evil grin spread across his face, and I called that introduction a real hell of a debut. It's the first of the month, and the whole country is holding its breath as the September 2025 Hunter rankings drop, sending everyone wild with excitement as they stare at their screens waiting for the refresh. Even Yoon Young is getting into the vibe, showing off his stats to his mom. Usually this is just background noise for the masses, but today feels different, starting in a sterile hospital room where Kim Jae and his partner finally catch the live feed, while the Hunter Association president, Moon Jong-tae, receives the official dossier for the September World Standings, and fresh from a bloodbath, Lee Sai smirks, wondering if that specific rookie cracked the list, with Yeokchan Seo, now enjoying celebrity status, rolling his eyes at the flashy graphics as he scrolls past the garbage to find the only names that carry real weight, the top 10. The screen shows Lee So-yoon securing the 10th spot, while her team hides out in a frozen wasteland. Sitting at number 5 is the deadly Kim Chae-yoon gripping her golden fan blades, while the third-ranked powerhouse Cho Yom is revealed as a pyromaniac wrapped in his own flames. As the second spot falls to the tank, young Tesso flexes, his body glowing with an insane purple aura. Before he can even look at the number 1 spot, a man in a suit rushes in to tell him he is the big star for today. The official gets him excited by shouting, "The wait is over, it's showtime," and at the press conference, the man hands out props while pointing out his name among the 25 rising stars. On the paper his name burns in red, marking a record-breaking debut, where a rookie shredding a grade 3 rift alone isn't just standard, it's legendary. Sok stepped into a swirling mess of cameras and shouting reporters who were screaming about his past and his impossible win. Trapped like a zoo animal on display, he ends the Q&A early and lets the audience ask just one final question. A folk reporter hammers on his mental state and demands a soundbite for his future, but he shuts them down cold and tells them to stop using the "I'll try my best" cliches. But with ice running through his veins, he promises the results will speak for themselves before the scene shifts to Chan-sok riding shotgun in a helicopter as it hovers over the skeleton of the old Gansel prison. The president looks down at the nightmare, explaining that while most governments fell apart when the rifts opened, South Korea didn't just survive, they got stronger, pointing silently to their hidden tech as proof. And when our guy asks if this wreckage is what happens to the weak, the president nods, saying that world capitals have been wiped off the map, then invites the rookie to look around at the destruction, revealing this is one of the Great Eight, the deadliest corrosion rifts on Earth. 13 years ago, the Gansel disaster exploded from the city center without warning, trapping a few lucky survivors in a deadly new zone where monsters hunted them down and erased them forever. It took just a few days for a whole city to vanish, and he explains that even though countries look strong from the outside, their leaders are barely keeping control. Chan-suk dives straight into the lesson, cutting through the small talk to ask why he was even brought here, only for the president to spill the beans. Yoon Song-yoon from the Tip Guild had shown up, fuming that the rookie had turned down their offer. Our guy flashes back to the crushing pressure of the tank, who tried to force him into joining. He's shaken to find out Sehien has the guts to ask for his location, but the president promises he kept quiet while warning that Tibek follows a survival of the fittest rule and might try to attack him. Our guy checks the air and admits that with his current stats, he'd get totally crushed in a raw strength contest against them. The president reads him like an open book, seeing a lone wolf who refuses to be a pawn, so he pushes his own way to power by taking big jobs directly and bluntly asks what price he pays for this VIP treatment. The president plays it cool, telling the rookie that he's the only one who had his back when it mattered. Spotting a chance to earn fame, he grabs the mission file and accepts the deal. The escort job was a nightmare run carrying cargo from Bususan to Nanning City, a dangerous path crawling with corruption. When he checked the manifest, he was baffled to find Rolex watches and a fancy car listed as everyday needs. The president drops a riddle, insisting that certain VIPs absolutely need these fancy items, thinking our hero would get the political message, but our guy just doesn't care and asks why anyone would want luxury trash when the government is already falling apart. The president argues that global influence and alliances still matter even as the world falls apart, but our hero realizes this mission is just a pointless favor to save face, so he unbuckles his seatbelt and walks away. The president goes into a panic, shouting that the Korean government must treat this as the most important job of all. But the hunter feels as cold as ice, calling it absolutely foolish for a lone player like him to get caught in the messy middle of politics. The president's mood suddenly turns sour as he sneers that the rookie's new fame is driving him crazy, a terrible thing to say. With a casual toss, our guy flings the mission papers out of the helicopter door as the stunned politician watches in silence, and after one last look back, he thanks him for the ride before walking away cool as a cucumber. He decides to swim all the way back to Seoul alone, which leaves the president staring at him with his mouth wide open. Without wasting another moment, he flips perfectly out of the plane and dives toward the ocean, leaving the president staring in shock at the huge splash below, while muttering that today's youth are out of control, before the scene shifts to evening at Incheon port, where a worker on a coffee break spots something strange in the water. Suddenly a wet and worn-out Yoo Chun-suk pulls himself onto the dock, gasping for breath. Between gasping breaths, he screams that he truly thought he was going to die out there. Amidst the workers' outburst of sympathy for the presumed tragedy, our protagonist awkwardly mumbles thanks before locking eyes with his new goal, grinding for strength by tackling the toughest missions to speedrun his way to the top. Once his plan is strong enough, even the mayor or the president will never be able to make him do what they want again. He scrolls through job postings on his phone until one catches his eye, a high-stakes rescue mission on Tsushima Island right next to a dangerous corrosion rift, so he sits on a shipping container, lets out a heavy sigh as the sun disappears, and though he's still wet, he feels ready and focused knowing he's about to get busy. Mission briefing reveals a dark truth from September 3rd, when a crew of fishermen vanished during jumbo shrimp season because the ocean erupted into a violent storm, only for us to later discover that corrosion monsters from the island rift had attacked and dragged the entire fleet away. A shaken survivor later whispered that the fishermen were still alive, held captive and waiting. Our hero sits at his computer, calculating the massive reward for taking down a grade 2 rift alone, but he knows the monsters are too strong to face by himself. After realizing his powerful flame is fading and that a lower-level hero needs backup, he laughs off the idea that top hunters would help a civilian, until he suddenly spots the one desperate person who would definitely say yes. The scene shifts to the boat where he stands ready in fresh combat gear. Just then, Hansanga, the new recruit, gives him a tap. She wants to know when they'll make it to the island. He checks his phone and reminds her to save her strength for the upcoming battle, but she's too busy staring at his special Iron Surfer shoulder pad and excitedly asking how he got it, leaving him to casually mention it was a gift while she pouts that her own sponsor never gives her anything as cool. He flashes a smug smile, bragging that he unlocked VIP status by taking down a tough solo challenge while she's still just a beginner, and dares her to prove her worth so she can get the same cool perks, but seeing the spark in her eyes tells him his teasing just made her want to try harder. Suddenly, the story flashes back to reveal how this wild pair came together just days ago when he bluntly asked the shaky Hansang-ah to squat up. She stopped, still shaken by how close they came to dying in a grade 3 rift, and couldn't help wondering if he was crazy for jumping into a grade 2 while he just waited there in total silence. He cut through the silence with a single question, reminding her that since she wanted to learn from the best, she should accept his offer to skyrocket her power. With that crazy power floating right in front of her, he made her pick. Driven by a hunger that ran deep inside her, she knew she couldn't stay weak. She locked her gaze in place and declared that if the price was growing stronger, she'd be more than happy to plunge straight into hell itself. Suddenly, a shrill alarm blasts through the air on the boat and instantly ruins their mood. As the crew sees strange lights ahead, ghostly ships suddenly rise from the thick fog. His eyes sweep the scene in a split second, spotting 5 enemy ships. His heart pounding with worry for the hostages, he quietly plans a sneaky way to get in without anyone noticing. He turns to ask for her input, only to find her casually floating in midair. He freezes in shock at her floating form, only to get slapped with a smug grin and a taunt to show he's failed, while her massive, smug smile reveals how she's finally found her chance to prove him wrong. He pretends to be shocked while she laughs and teases him, saying it's hardly a real skill at all. The scene shifts to him gliding across the water, struggling to carry her while she complains about not being able to walk on the water yet and begs him to stop splashing. But the fun vanishes the second they get close, and his gut tells him it's time to run. He quickly comes up with a plan on the spot, telling her to grab a nearby ship, and when she asks why, he explains that he can feel the heavy magical power coming from the back ships, which is where the real danger lies. Once she gets the plan, she nods and leaps onto the deck. But the moment she touches down, she stops dead in her tracks, unsure if the figure standing there is even human. From behind, he yells for her to watch carefully and see the creature's creepy, unnatural moves before it drops its fake face to show its scary, bony true form. She lands on the ship's railing, ready to fight. He quickly jokes about her pose, warning that landing like that is a fast track to blown-out knees. Then he drags her along, blaming her loud noises for aggroing the entire map, just as a horde of undead pirate-looking creatures locks their glowing eyes on the pair. His eyes glow with power as he charges up a huge bolt of lightning to smash through everything in its path. He instantly spots these guys as nothing but useless fodder. He looks at his partner, wondering how she'll deal with such tough opponents. He watched her fight and saw that she was already giving everything she had. He shouts her name, warning that she's burning through her magic too fast and will run dry, even as she fights for her life while he yells that she needs to slow down for the scrubs. His promise to mentor her replays again and again in her mind. She mutters in anger at her shaky hands while he keeps shouting at her. She tries to hold back her lightning, but the live coaching won't stop. He screams that she's still going too hard and forces her to learn control right in the heat of the battle. All of a sudden, a sharp, painful memory pulls back the curtain to show the cold, dark truth that she has no power. When she sees her former self crying and helpless, she vows never to be a weakling again, driven by a fierce desire to grow stronger no matter what. His shout jolts her out of her trance, just as the undead monster lunges at her. With intense focus, she pours all her strength into one powerful hit that slices the monster right in half. Her inner voice tells her the struggle is real, with sparks of electricity flashing in her eyes as she fully commits to her dark promise and dives straight into hell, only to face total burnout after a brutal sea battle, leaving her balancing on a rail surrounded by rotting monster corpses while he stares at her, signaling that playing the hero is over. He gives a lazy thumbs up, signaling that all the other boats crawling with those things have been cleared out, and she swallows her pride because the situation was way too sketchy for her usual stubbornness. She mutters her thanks for the tip, but he snaps back that most idiots wouldn't get it unless he spoon-fed them, only for her to drop a bombshell that marks the first real advice she's ever received, leaving him paused and genuinely confused as he wonders what his seniors were actually doing at the academy, since they were just sleeping. I grabbed things too quickly, and she shrugged, guessing that watching a rookie crush the class had made the teachers angry, while he grinned to see how he could push it further and asked if she was scared of becoming stronger than him, her eyes blazing with focus as she hit him with the truth that she'd already outpaced every teacher she'd ever had, stunning him for a second before he bounced back fast. Cute, but don't count on that ever happening to me, because you'll spend the rest of your life chasing after my back. Touching down on Tsushima Island, 2 Coast Guard officers salute to confirm they're holding the line back at Juoje Island, and he waves them off as his mind instantly shifts to tactical mode, noting that intel says the hostages are hiding in a shrine while she nods and pulls up the map. We've got 2 targets, Kaijin and Wadatsumi, with Kaijin Shrine set as our first goal, so while hiking there is an easy few hours, he spots the flaw in our plan because getting back is going to be a nightmare with 15 hostages to save. Moving all those injured civilians is going to be a real nightmare. Plus, the air is thick with nasty mana that burns like acid on your skin, while the island is crawling with corrosion beasts that never stop hunting, so to get out alive, they need wheels fast. He spots a beat-up, abandoned van and asks if you're ready, to which she scoffs before jumping behind the wheel, launching the vehicle like a rocket that screams its tires and kicks up a massive cloud of dust. Clutching at life as it slips away, he screams, "You call that driving? Are those brakes just for show?" He bellows, and she snaps back, "If you don't like it, you don't get it. You can't drive anymore. Forget it and just hold onto the doorframe." He leaps from the window onto the speeding van's roof, knowing the driver's reckless style is far safer than his expired license, so he'll stick to combat as he locks eyes on the chasing monsters, whips out a stone-tied rope, spins it to a lethal blur, and cracks the air to shatter a skull before yanking the line tight and drawing his spear for the fight. Suddenly, his eyes go wide because another pack of uglies is circling them. Coming from the left, he roars toward the driver's seat as she shouts, "I got this." He realizes her plan a split second too late and shouts, "Wait, don't. It's too late," she screams as she violently yanks the wheel, sending the van careening into the monsters and splatting them like roadkill. Then she laughs like a mad woman. Perched on the roof and watching the chaos unfold, he mutters, "Maybe I should have driven," right as their wild ride hits a snag, a massive, steep staircase cutting straight up through the forest. Behind them, a sea of the dead surges up the stairs, scraping and clawing at the back of the van. "Get inside the gate," he orders, and she nods with eyes fixed ahead as she floors the pedal, sending the van crashing through the shrine in a cloud of flying wood. At the exact same moment, he flips backward off the roof and lands with the horde right in front of him. His eyes suddenly fill with a scary purple light. The paradox flame ignites, sending up a swirling tornado of purple and black energy that instantly covers the stairs. His plan is simple yet brilliant. Instead of burning the monsters, he burns the friction itself, causing the whole horde to slip and tumble down the stairs like a wild landslide. Inside the shrine, Han Sang-ah finds the targets, while a terrified fisherman sits bound and huddled in the dark. She cautiously moves closer to one of the survivors to ask if he is hurt, but he is so broken that all he can manage is stuttering nonsense. She flashes her badge, declaring she's from the Hunter Association and is the only way out of this nightmare. The fisherman goes insane and screams a single word, "Run," as a giant armored samurai with a raised blade appears right behind her. Boom. In a flash, Yu Chun-sik leaps in to block the attack, his spear locking against the blade as his eyes burn with deadly focus, barking a sharp command to rush everyone to the van while he stands alone to take down this monster. The fight starts right away, and Chunioak blocks the samurai's heavy swings as if they are nothing, while he stands his ground with feet planted firm and eyes locked on the monster as it winds up for a massive smash that he catches on his own sword before the undead warrior pulls back to try to split him in two. With a shriek, Santa flies in, his van sliding right into the monster as he yells, "Just die already." Then, crunch, the front grille smashes the samurai's skull, dropping him instantly, leaving Chun-sik to stare at his wild driver as the dust settles. Hanging off the side, he deadpans and reminds me to never let him drive again, while Santa just rolls her eyes and tells him to shut up and get in. With the engines roaring, he checks on the VIPs and gets a nod from Santa, but her face suddenly falls into pure confusion as she stares out the windshield. Guy's front, she screams, but Chun-sik is way ahead of her already, locking onto the nightmare blocking their path. The abyss ahead is staring back. Hundreds of glowing red eyes ignite in the darkness like a swarm of angry fireflies. An army of shrieking undead surges forward. Meanwhile, Chun-ak is weirdly calm, noting that the samurai from earlier was actually pretty tanky to survive a van to the face. Seeing the tidal wave of zombies approaching, he makes a call. "Toss me your sword," he demands. Santa freaks out. Giving up her blade is a massive insult to a swordsman, even with death literally seconds away. Chun-ak Act shuts down her ego trip instantly. It is simple, keep your pride or save these people. Santa grits her teeth, swallows her pride, and throws the weapon to him. He holds both his spear and sword ready for the hit, grumbling to himself because he really doesn't want to use his secret weapon this soon. The scene jumps back to the Giogondo Rift, where he cracks open a mysterious box that glows with light. He still feels the shock of finding not gold inside, but a lone armored gauntlet humming with a faint blue energy. The moment he slid it on, he realized this wasn't just equipment, it was a game changer. The glove began pulling mana straight from the air. To a normal hunter, it's just a simple pack of batteries, but for him, it's a tiny nuclear reactor. He did the math and found the mana battery only lasted 5 minutes. For just 300 seconds, his power surges to match the world's 10th ranked hunter, Lee Soon, before he snaps back to reality and rockets into the sky with weapons ready. The gauntlet glows and fills his veins with raw power, so he swings and blasts a wave of energy that shatters the zombie army instantly, leaving Santa in the van speechless with awe. Glancing in the side mirror, she freezes, unable to believe that hundreds of monsters have simply vanished. Buff's time's up, but Chunhyuk just acts like nothing happened and yells drive as they peel out through empty streets toward Harakatu port, only for the universe to throw another wave of zombies their way, causing the van to rattle dangerously while Chunhyuk calmly insists on keeping the engine running even as Santa screams that it's about to blow, just moments before a neon blue dome springs to life around the car and blasts the charging monsters back, leaving Santa completely stunned. Inside the bubble, the battered van rolls steadily toward the harbor. She glances in the rearview and watches the horde crash into a wall that can't be seen. Her eyes widened as she finally figured it out. There, a glowing rune appeared on a passing building as Chunhyuk finally spoke up. You explained the shape of their protective circle in simple words so she could understand. Drew a line that even the monsters can't cross. She gasps and asks where he learned that, and he shrugs, saying that's just another world and you couldn't learn it anyway. Hugh smirks with pride in his clever idea, but she cuts through his ego to ask if his math trick actually works for everything. He admits the trick only has so much power and that it won't work against the real threat because as the undead samurai easily walks right through the barrier without a scratch, his overwhelming power and ancient duty to protect the sacred make everything else feel weak. Still suddenly, a bone-chilling cold seizes Hananga as the monster's terrifying weight crushes her. Chunhyuk instantly spots the beast's power with her mind's eye and feels a chill vibe, only to realize it's the legendary sixth sense that lets her read an opponent's moves before they even happen. She trembles, wondering how a rotting corpse can wield a technique that even Grand Masters struggle to unlock, but he stays ice cold, reassuring her there is absolutely nothing to fear, and confidently writes off legendary skills like Mind's